It's closing argument time. What are the candidates up to?
Hey, Joe, I'm here at the Saddle Up Saloon in Kingston, New Hampshire. I'm here at the Saddle Up Saloon in Kingston, New Hampshire, where an event for former President Trump just wrapped up. It's retail campaign season here in New Hampshire, where it's happening in full swing. The top 3 Republican candidates held 12 events throughout the state today, and 7 of those were for former Governor Nikki Haley. So that's more than half of them. She's really been trying to crisscross the state and meet voters in person as she tries to make this a one-on-one contest with former President Trump. But one thing is for sure, that these candidates are trying to target independent voters here in New Hampshire. They make up the largest percent of the vote here at 39% of the electorate. I've been having the chance to talk to voters throughout the day here. Here's what one independent voter told me about what they're staking this election on.
As the most involved voters of any state in the union. I don't think there's anyone who votes in this state who doesn't have an opinion on something, whether that be Republican, Democrat, or independent. I'm a registered independent, and I will reaffirm my independent status after I vote in the Republican primary.
Now, of course, big news today. Bloomberg News reporting that Senator Tim Scott is expected to endorse former President Trump tonight at a rally in New Hampshire. Joe and Kailey, as you know, this is considered a blow for Nikki Haley's campaign, who has been trying to court that more moderate lean.
All right, Tyler, Kendall, looking chilly in New Hampshire. Looking forward to joining you there tomorrow. Thank you so much. Meanwhile, here in Washington, President Biden today signed the continuing resolution into law that will prevent a partial government shutdown this weekend. But not all matters are solved. And White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says Congress should turn its attention to the president's supplemental budget request.
Instead of wasting more time on partisan appropriation bills that violate the budget agreement 2/3 of them voted for last spring, House Republicans must finally do their jobs and work across the aisle to pass full-year funding bills that deliver for the American people and address urgent domestic and national security priorities by passing the president's supplemental request.
Let's turn now to Zach Cohen of Bloomberg Government. So the supplemental request obviously includes funding for border security, funding for Ukraine as well. House Speaker Mike Johnson barely got this continuing resolution over the line with enough Republican votes. There were more than 100 Republicans who didn't vote to keep the government open with this package. How hard is it going to be to secure votes for something that they may not like in the Ukraine aid?
There really are 2 big hurdles that this emergency supplemental package needs to get through to help, as you mentioned, Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and, of course, funding for the southern border. First, the Senate's got to come up with this package. Negotiators from the Senate and the White House have been talking for weeks now, trying to come up with some sort of agreement that can satisfy at least majorities of both Democrats and Republicans in the Senate. The key issue then will be once that package gets out of the Senate, if it gets out of the Senate, we could start seeing votes on that next week. Is where does that go in the House? There are obviously plenty of members of the House Republican Conference who do not want to see more aid to Ukraine and are going to be skeptical of any sort of negotiation on border security, even though there have been plenty of compromises with Democrats on this issue. So how Mike Johnson is able to square that circle and toe that line is going to be really interesting and will determine where this $110 billion of aid goes.
Could this come down to a trade with Democrats, is what we're hearing, to save Mike Johnson's speakership? If a couple of them would line up to help him fend off a motion to vacate, because what he's suggesting here, what he may be about to do, is what got Kevin McCarthy fired, and we've been down this road before.
We have heard our colleagues have talked to Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican from Georgia, who has said if Speaker Mike Johnson brings up aid for Ukraine in any sort of package, even if it's with significant concessions on border security that Republicans have been calling for, that she would file a motion to vacate. Now, she would need a handful of Republicans, as well as all Democrats, to support her on that effort to actually oust Johnson from the speakership. It seems like something that even Johnson wouldn't want to go for. Now, that some Democrats have talked about, maybe supporting him on that motion to vacate as a trade for this broader supplemental package. But if Democrats ended up supporting Johnson on something like that, eventually he would have a revolt from Republicans anyway and make it much more difficult to govern for the rest of the year, at least as long as Republicans have the majority.
Zach, thanks for being with us. Zach Cohen at the table here as we turn our attention to Congress and bring in Kate Ackley of Bloomberg Government. Let's hold on this for a minute, Kate, because we're talking about a lot of moving parts here. That's the backdrop for a potential tax deal that seems to be moving forward. Maybe a snow day here. I don't know how many people are on Capitol Hill, but the Ways and Means Committee was in session for a markup at 9 a.m. Is this going to see the light of day?
It seems like it's on a good path. I mean, it's got a lot of support in the business community, and it has obviously support among Democrats to do this child tax credit expansion. So you've got, yes, there's a lot in there that people don't like. Democrats say it doesn't go enough in terms of expanding the child tax credit. But there's a little bit of something for almost everybody to like and dislike, and maybe that's a recipe for the path forward. A lot of the people who are pushing for this outside of Congress really see this as something that will kind of set the table or set the stage for a much bigger tax bill next year, 2025, when a bunch of things from the 2017 bill are set to expire. So, you know, I had one source tell me just this week that seeing this kind of bipartisan compromise, that two committee chairs, a Senate Democrat and a House Republican, you know, come together and broker a deal that not everyone is happy with, but a lot of people are on board with in a bipartisan way, that this could indicate something into next year, into the big tax talks next year. He described it as a muscle memory on how to do a bipartisan deal. Maybe it could even have ripples into other areas as well.
Yeah, I talked with Jason Smith, the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, and he essentially echoed that this shows that this can be done in a bipartisan way. But he did say too many changes would end up killing the bill, which is maybe why not everyone's going to get what they want in this. Speaking of getting what they want, those leading the impeachment inquiry into President Biden and involve his son Hunter Biden in that, maybe getting what they want from him next month. We got news yesterday on February 28th. Hunter Biden will be appearing for a closed-door deposition, which is what the likes of Jim Jordan and James Comer have been asking for. Where does this go after that?
Well, there was a little bit of concern that the Hunter Biden team wanted to talk in public. And you might think, well, why would he want to do, you know, something in public? But it's because of this concern that, you know, quotes will leak out, little bits and pieces will come out, and that it could be taken out of context. But somehow, you know, the lawyers all got in a room and brokered this, that he will be doing a deposition, if you will. And so this investigation, I think what we're seeing is like the very tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot going on that affects obviously the administration, Congress, but also there's this whole world of sort of foreign influence that this is touching. This, you know, we've seen big law firms, lobbying shops file retroactively that they were working for some of the same clients that Hunter Biden was working for. So there could be some ripples here that we're going to be keeping our eye on. How far does this go?